What is going on, everyone? Jonathan here with the Venue RX podcast. And joined on the show today with me is someone who I met in person at this last year's wedding MBA, and someone who I was running around doing a little bit of everything at the convention out in Las Vegas. But the guest on today's show, I actually got to listen in to his presentation about marketing, about lead generation. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. His presentation was so engaging, and I am so excited to welcome you, Sal Cincotta, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Jonathan, thanks for having me, man.
I am pumped about this conversation because lead gen, and I think specifically here we're recording this at the beginning of 2022. It's going to air, sometime in the next month or so. But lead generation is so important for business because without leads and without sales, the business doesn't happen, right?
100% right. I think the biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs make is they underestimate how important marketing is, but they also underestimate when they should get started. And in the wedding industry specifically, now is the time. I mean, historically, the data doesn't lie. December is the #1 engagement month. I mean, it's going as far back as they've probably got data. So knowing that, I would say, and the trends we've seen so far, as we're sitting in January as we record this, that I think that trend is actually accurate. So even in the time of COVID, people are still getting engaged, still wanting to plan their weddings. So if you're in the wedding industry, now is the time to start marketing. Now is the time to start doing bridal shows, generating leads, and getting ready for an incredible 2022. And if you don't do that and you don't take that action, you're going to be left wondering why you had such a bad year.
So I love that. We're going to unpack this. And whether you are listening online or whether you are, checking out our YouTube channel, you're going to want to check out Sal's links. We're going to put links to all of Sal's stuff, his presence professionally. And you're going to want to check out what he does because he's an incredible photographer. And actually, I want you, Sal, can you give us a little bit of your origin story? Because I'm always fascinated how people got into this industry. And before we unpack this marketing awesomeness that we're going to be talking about, how did you get into this industry? What's your origin story? And how are you, the incredible impact? How did you get to this place that you are today?
Yeah, it's I started 15 years ago. My background though is I actually went to business school, and I'd been doing photography probably since I was a kid. My aunt had a dark room, and that was kind of what got me into photography. But there's a difference between it being a hobby and something you're doing on the weekend versus it being a full-fledged business. And so about 15 years ago, I pulled the plug, quit my job in corporate, and started pursuing a career in photography, specifically weddings. And so I did my first bridal show. It's hard to even believe that, but I did my first bridal show almost 15 years ago. And I learned really quickly that it didn't matter how good of a photographer I was, that if I wasn't a good marketer, if I didn't have good presence, if I didn't have good brand awareness, I wasn't going to be successful as a business owner, right? And so that, coupled with my business background, that's what I went to school for, just kind of, I'm like light bulb moments constantly in watching creatives, which are notoriously bad marketers, fail. And I was like, I got to be different. I got to find a way to stand out. And that's kind of how I became a good marketer in this industry. Fast forward to today, because we have been so successful marketing our own business, suddenly other businesses, other brands are coming to us and saying, hey, help us market our business. And that's really how we got started in what is now known as Creative Sync. That's how that marketing agency was born. Not necessarily that was my path or my future. It was just out of necessity and helping other wedding industry professionals market their own businesses.
You said you went to business school. Was entrepreneurship and business something that was already always kind of on your mind and in your DNA, or did you have kind of a come to Jesus moment at a certain point that you're just like, man, this entrepreneurship thing is something I love?
So I'm going to tell you a funny story. I've never told this story. I'm not kidding with you, but now I'm going to have to tell it other places. I've never told this story before. So when I was a little kid, my staff is listening and I don't even know if they know this story. when I was a kid. I want to say I was about 12 or 13 years old, maybe a little bit younger. It doesn't matter. I was very young. Okay. And my parents, we grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and my parents said, you got to get a job. Right. And so I went to the local, they made me go to the local deli, and I took a job as stocking the shelves and a delivery boy. So a few weeks goes by, and my parents, they shopped at this local deli, and they went in and they talked to the owner, and they're like, so how's he doing? How's it going? They go, well, we don't really see him that often. He shows up to get his paycheck, but other than that, we don't really see him. And my parents, very curious, were like, what are you talking about? At 11, 12 years old, I was subcontracting my job to friends. And the rub was, so I had a friend I was subcontracting. I'm not making this up. It sounds surreal. I was subcontracting the delivery route to one friend. And the rub was he keeps all the tips, but I get the paycheck for being clocked in. And I subcontract another to somebody else who would stock the shelves. And that was our rub.
Wow.
So my parents were like, what monster are we raising here at such a young age? So I would say,
That's
based
incredible.
on that, entrepreneurship was kind of or the hustle, I suppose, was in my DNA from a very young age.
The
That's a
hustle.
crazy story, isn't it?
That's wild. That is so cool. I mean, you were delegating from such an early age. I mean,
crazy.
that's like high level business stuff. I mean, that's stuff that a lot of solopreneurs really struggle with. And you were right there at 11, 12, 13, like, making your deals.
I know. I love listening to my mom tell that story because I honestly find it hard to believe. I'm like, what? Because I can't remember that. I don't know. As you get older, like, what the hell was I even thinking when I was doing that? And how did I convince my friends to do that too? So who knows? But when I come from an immigrant family, right? So half Italian, half Lebanese, and my grandparents immigrated to this country, and I think that kind of immigrant hustle is definitely in my DNA, right? Like they came to America for a better life, for more opportunity, and I was first to graduate from college, and so there's just a lot of pressure on I guess me placed by my parents that I was going to be the first to graduate college. I was going to go to law school, and that really was my path. But I would say not necessarily because it's what I wanted to do, but it was what I felt like I was supposed to do. But I was very creative as a kid. And then slowly but surely, as time went on, I fell in love with photography at a young age. But my parents were like, there's no way we're going to let you do that. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. So I did that, graduated with a dual degree of computer science and finance. Now, at the time, there was no magic there. Like today, that if you computer science is almost a requirement, but I'm going back to like late 90s. The internet hadn't quite exploded the way it is today. So computer science was thought of as like, you must be some closet nerd or something like that. Well, I graduate college and I've got a degree in business and a degree in computer science, and my stock value is through the roof. So a company like Procter and Gamble, they're throwing money at me. And then after that, I worked for Microsoft because having both the business acumen and technical acumen was highly valued at the time, but it still wasn't my passion. All the while, even when I worked in corporate, I had this entrepreneurial mindset that I was bringing to the table. And I think it was just inevitable that I would end up where I am today. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it just seems like I'm where I belong. Does that make sense?
100%. This is such a cool, unique story. And you having those entrepreneurial roots and then kind of going the business, the traditional route. I hear immigrant and I have similar background. I'm actually Chaldean and Italian. And very much in the family, it's kind of like doctor, lawyer, failure kind of thing. Like pick one of those, solid, secure professions that you can make a good living at. And I'm curious though, when you are transitioning then from being in the corporate world to doing something where you're running it on your own and you're in more of a creative space, did you find that your experiences in the corporate world actually helped you kind of start getting some of the business bones in place a lot quicker than maybe other creatives?
100%. I would say that when we talk about the marketing side or the business side, the one thing that I feel confident in saying, 80-20 rule, right? Everything. There's always going to be people who don't fit into this mold, but 80% of the time, I'm watching creatives or entrepreneurs are passionate about what they're doing. You could be a caterer, a florist, a venue, a photographer. You're passionate about what you're doing and you're very good at your craft. You're just not very good at anything else around you. And I think that's pretty commonplace with most people who start with their passion and then move on to turning their passion into a business. Nobody's ever prepared to have a passion explode as a business and then realize, well, now I got to think about taxes. I got to think about retirement. I got to think about, nobody's ever ready for that. So for me, when I did come out of corporate America and started my own business, I understood these pieces are foundational to success. Now, I'm not going to lie and say day one, we were really good at it because, when you're at a Fortune top 50 company like a Microsoft or a Procter Gamble, they got people there who do that, right? Yeah. Suddenly you're a solopreneur and you're responsible for everything. And, that takes time to get going. Again, fast forward to today, got almost 40 employees. We've got, a 12,000 square foot building that we're sitting here in that we own. And those things just take time and they're natural progression of making smart decisions, working hard. But business and marketing are at the core of everything we do.
I was going to say, I would be surprised if you didn't have employees with such a start like you did.
Yeah, I'll flip this around for you. It's a little dark in here now. Hey, can you girls turn on at least all the lights? So we have a really cool building. It's 12,000 square foot historical building. And this is kind of, I'm at my desk, but that's just that's our second floor. You can see all the exposed beams and
the brick. Yeah.
Yeah. And the brick. And you could see, I don't have an office. And so that's part of our culture as well. Like, I love having my, my people. I mean, of course, there's moments where you got to have private conversations. You can go to a different part of the building. I mean, we have 3 floors in here, but you can go to a different part of the building. But I like having my core team, that's who's on this floor, have access to me, sharing ideas, being very vocal about it versus you just go into your office and lock a door. So that's a little bit of culture that I brought from Microsoft, was that kind of like no office, open shared space. But I love it. I love what we get to do. And I love the hustle of it all. That
is so cool. Sal, I want to ask you some questions later about scaling a team. I hope we can touch on that. And if we don't get to do in this podcast, maybe to have you back on. But I really want to talk about sales and more specifically marketing today, because, I run a company that manages wedding venues. And, that's something that we do on the side, not related to the podcast necessarily. And one of the things that I've seen from the venue owners, and I think this is maybe consistent throughout other people, and you alluded to it certainly, people in the wedding and events industry may not understand really the power and the necessity of marketing. Are you seeing that with what you're doing across the industry?
100%. I would say that's true of all small business owners, but if we're speaking specifically in the wedding industry, I would agree wholeheartedly. If I had to frame it, I would say in their minds, it's real simple. If I do marketing, I need to see a one-to-many result, meaning I go to a bridal show, I book 5 weddings. I go to a bridal show, I book 2 weddings. Go to a bridal show, I book 10 weddings, no weddings. Whatever it is, it's very binary to them, meaning I did this, what was the result? Unfortunately, any marketer who understands how marketing works understands that marketing is not always one-to-one. It's sometimes it takes time for that seed you're planting, right, to kind of come to fruition and generate. So a lot of times I have to retrain business owners on how to look healthy at marketing. So one of the things I like to do when I'm working with somebody and coaching them or helping them, whatever we're doing, is, I ask them, what are your goals, from this campaign? Let's say you're a business owner. So I'm talking to you as a business owner. What are your goals? That would be a question I'd have for you. Okay, well, it's not enough to say we want to book more weddings. That's ridiculous. It's too nebulous. Okay, well, we're going to run a Facebook campaign. We're going to go to a bridal show. We're going to do, Google AdWords, and we expect to book, 2 weddings. And okay, and insert your number there. The healthy way to look at it is, what's your cost per lead? What's your cost per acquisition? This is where things start getting squirrely with most business owners. Again, 80-20. I'm sure there's business owners where I'm saying this right now and they get it. And a lot of times when I'm having this meeting, this is how you're asking me what I would say to, venues and stuff like that. I can either tell they know what I'm talking about or don't know what I'm talking about based on how much glaze over their eyes happens, right? And when I start asking, what's your cost of acquisition, and you don't know the answer, okay, that's okay. But at least you've got to start getting them to think like, well, shit, we don't know how much. Well, how much does it cost us to book a wedding, right? Because let's just say, for argument's sake, and I'll use my own photography business as an example. I go to a bridal show. I like to get a double booth. I like to get an end cap. So a typical booth might cost me, let's just say for argument's sake, $2,500. A typical wedding or a wedding show, we will book 3 to 5 weddings. Let's be ambitious. Let's say I booked 5 weddings, $2,500 to be at the show. Cost per acquisition is $500. Now, people watching may go, what? That's so expensive. Some other people may watch and go, well, that's pretty cheap. Just depends on your industry, right? So now I'm armed with, okay, at a bridal show, my typical cost per acquisition is $500. Well, this is really interesting when you start trying to explain to somebody, hey, for Facebook marketing, you're trying to spend $15 a day and you think you're going to book. Doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're telling me you go to 4 bridal shows a year, it's costing you $500 per wedding you book. Give me that kind of money for a Facebook campaign, and you might see that instead of spending $500 per acquisition, it's only costing you $200, which would be half, more than half your cost of acquisition. So what I find, and am I going too fast?
No, this is great. Okay. This is great. And I really want to break this down even further, because I think business owners listening to this right now, and as they're considering their ad spends for the year, if they haven't done so already, not just ad spends, but like whether they're on a listing service or like wherever they are, I want to give them some tactical advice as far as like some starting places before they call you at Creative Sync, right? Before they do that, like where can they get started? What are some tactical things they should do? So yeah, keep going. You're crushing.
The first tactical thing I would do is look at 21 as a year in review. Even if you don't have a whole bunch of historical data to go after or look back on, at least look at the last 2 years, right? Get a spreadsheet and outline on your spreadsheet every marketing initiative that you've taken place in, whether it's bridal shows, magazines, direct mail, Facebook, whatever the case may be, and put, a bridal show, 10 weddings, cost of the show, right? And that should include everything. You should include, your booth display, your load in, your load out, all that kind of stuff. What's your cost to be at the show? It's definitely more than the cost of the table. Okay.
That's that's a really important thing to know, because it's not just, and Instagram is free, but if you're spending 20 hours a week on it as the business owner, and how
That's
much,
right.
Yeah. I love
That's
that.
right.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
You've got to understand your total cost. Now, in that final column, how many weddings did you book? Okay, 3, whatever it is. Divide your total cost by the number booked. That's your cost of acquisition. I guarantee you, every business owner watching this, if you do this, you're going to be shocked at how much it's actually costing you to book a new gig. Okay. But once you have that data, and if you have 2 or 3 years of data and you do this exercise, it is so powerful for your business for 22. Because now you can start looking at this and going, holy shit, like we're spending a lot of money on, I'm not picking on any one, we're spending a lot of money on the knot. Okay. My cost of acquisition on the knot is twice as expensive as my cost of acquisition at a bridal show, or vice versa. Maybe it's cheaper on the knot than the bridal show. Once you see that data in a spreadsheet, you are now making intelligent decisions like a CEO, not like a creative. You're not like a mom and pop shop. You're making intelligent decisions. And now you can say, okay, well, you know what? This year, we booked 5 weddings off the knot, 3 weddings at a bridal show, but the bridal show is half the cost of the knot. What would I do if I were the CEO? I'd be going to as many bridal shows as I could possibly go to in the upcoming 12 months, because I know I'm going to have a cheaper cost of acquisition. And then you're going to look at Facebook. What's your cost of acquisition there, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I say all of that with a giant, kind of asterisk and caveat. What you're going to want to realize is, just because your cost of acquisition is higher, let's say it's higher at a bridal show, don't just mark off bridal shows. Instead, step back and go, okay, what can we do? We're still going to do bridal shows. We're still going to do the knot. But what can we do? How can we change our presence? How can we maybe buy some better products or services that the knot offers for better placement, right? The knot offers front page placement. Bridal shows offer end caps. Maybe if we spend a little bit more money in placement, our cost per acquisition goes down because we get more traffic. So it's this kind of ebb and flow where you've got to be a kind of like a mad scientist and try different things. Don't just write one thing off because it was bad one time, right? Give it another shot, but go at it more intelligently. Do something different at the next show. Maybe have an enter to win contest, like all sorts of things that we could talk about for hours. But that's the smart way to attack this problem. And I know I just did word vomit on you, so I'm so sorry.
No, I love it. No, this is amazing. I have a question though about how to categorize those leads. So let's say, you're at a wedding show, you are on the Knot and Wedding Wire, you are, doing some Instagram, some Facebook, some Google ads, you're a little bit of everywhere. How do you categorize a lead correctly? Because this is something I know I've struggled with. You don't know if they've seen you on Instagram, if they've seen you on a Google ad, and a lot of times, I don't know exactly what the statistics are, but what is it, 8 times that a client sometimes will see you prior to reaching out. And so oftentimes I know pros out there instructed to put, hey, how did you hear about us in their inquiry form. How do you really gauge correctly where these leads are coming from?
I don't even ask how you heard about us. I'm not a believer in it, if we're being transparent, because of the reasons you've said. What I have found over my career is we do direct mail, we do Facebook, we do bridal shows, we do magazines. And what I have found over my career is, to your point, I've got to hit them 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they take action. So somebody may have gotten a direct mail piece from me, put it in a pile. Then we're flipping through the bridal show magazine and saw my ad there, reinforcing the brand. Then went to the bridal show that the magazine is producing, and that's where they finally booked me. So I don't know what generated the sale. Was it the bridal show? Was it the magazine or the direct mail piece? So what I try to do is give credit to where the transaction occurs, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, they've probably seen you in all of those if you're targeting correctly, but where did they actually close the deal? That's where you should apply credit. Well, that leads to the next kind of question here, which is they went to your website. That's your fault a little bit, right? Because the smart thing to do is have what's known as landing pages, meaning we've all seen it on late night TV, the infomercials, right? If you're ever watching TV, right? Use code, swim trunks 22 to get your, okay. They're running those ads on 20 different TV channels. Each one has a different code. So when you go sign up, you use that code. That's what's going to get you. That's how you're going to know where it came from. But that's a little bit different because in those businesses, they're selling a product that's very transactional, right? I'm either buying it or I'm not. Well, in the wedding industry, we're kind of selling the idea of getting to the meeting, right? I don't know anybody unless you're selling invitations. No one's like, Sal, I'm going to pay you 10 grand for a wedding. Here's my credit card, right? They want to meet you. So what ends up happening for people in the wedding industry is they have one lead form and all the leads are coming in through that form. Therefore, they've got to ask, how did you hear about us? What I would rather see small businesses do, and this is what I coach people on, is every part of your business, other than Google organic traffic, I would have a dedicated lead form for the knot, a dedicated lead form for direct mail, a dedicated lead form for each one of those. Now, it's not foolproof, right? They still could find their way back to your main site, but 80-20, it's going to get them to the right place. And that's how you know with 80%, certainty where they came from.
That's powerful. That's powerful because it can be done. That can be done inexpensively through Google Forms, or even if you're using
Super inexpensive.
like HoneyBook or whatever. Like you can create different contact forms, and you'll know it's coming from this one versus this one.
That's right. Every kind of lead, whether it's like you said, HoneyBook or 17 Hats, or the host of, they all offer this concept of like lead pages, landing pages. There's so many tools out there that allow you to do this. And then if you're smart about it, you start having like a centralized database of sorts, right? Because you could go to a bridal show. I'm a big believer in going to a bridal show and having an iPad set up to generate leads. And one of the things we do with great success is enter to win a free studio makeover. We just worked with a beauty salon that hired us to help them with their beauty business for weddings specifically. And we developed a landing page that they had on an iPad, and it was enter to win a free hair and makeup for your bridal party, right? I don't know, $400 value. She ends up collecting 268 leads at this bridal show she just did this past Saturday. And all she had to do was have that up there with some signage. They're entering in their email addresses because they want to win free hair and makeup. And now we announced a winner. It's not like multi-layer marketing or anything like that. She picked a winner, and all the other 267 leads are now in her email database, tagged as coming from that bridal show, all getting an email saying, hey, you didn't win, but if you sign up with us for a consultation by January 31st, save 30% off your, wedding, your wedding package or whatever it is. Okay. So now in the future, now they go to her website. They're going to end up in that database tagged differently. So she's going to be able to see, okay, I've been contacted 3 different ways by this one person, all because we're building this. And I might be making it sound like it's super complicated.
No,
it's not.
No.
It just requires you to think through what you're doing more than just a single contact.
Yeah. Sal, you alluded to something I have a question about. When you were mentioning this scenario with this beauty bar and what they were doing with the show, you mentioned an email. They would send out the email. And I have a question about your opinion on building an email list in this industry specifically. Because to your point before, the difference between what we're doing and what people in product businesses, it's kind of like, product, people can keep sending you emails forever and ever about t-shirts or mugs or whatever else.
Right.
But we're selling something, someone's date's going to come and go. They probably hired a DJ or a photographer or something. What's your opinion on email lists and building a list in this industry?
The value's in the name. I'm a huge believer in capturing the name. To your point, though, there's an expiration date. There's no doubt about it. When they get married, right, it's over. When they book your vendor, it's over. So for me, I'm a wedding photographer. If they book another wedding photographer, they're not going to book me, right? I can't sell them on it next week. So that's why it's even more important to know how volatile the names are, and that accept that there's an expiration date. But that requires you to keep doing this, right, all the time. So if you could collect their date, right, and that their wedding date, and that would at least let you know, like, hey, after this month, stop emailing them. They're already married. Or, right, you can just basically nag the shit out of them until they opt out. That's another way. Because who cares? Who cares if you have a high unsubscribe rate, if we're talking email specifically? Because after, call it 4 to 6 months, they're not your client anyway. So I'd be okay. So I think there has to be this purging of your list. But I'm a huge believer that if you're going to go to a bridal show, and yeah, there's going to be, I don't know, it depends on the show, right? 500 or 1,000 brides there. And you just go there, set up your booth, don't collect names, or worse, wait for the venue to send you the list of names and emails. And then maybe like 3 weeks later, you finally get around to sending them a single email. Hey, man, you're so late to the game. It's not even funny, because all the other vendors have already inundated their inbox. So I would much rather have a way to collect their name at the show and immediately get them into a nurturing campaign where we're trying to get to a meeting, right? In the wedding industry, you've got to get to the meeting. And almost everybody, I would say, probably feels They have a 70, 80, 90% conversion rate when you get to the meeting with the client. That's the most difficult part. And so what are you waiting for? Like if I'm at a bridal show and you want to know what vendor there is too many of at every bridal show? Photographers. And so if I go to a bridal show and there's 30 other photographers, but those knuckleheads are sitting there waiting to email the brides, they're going to go to a bridal show and be like, it wasn't really worth it. We didn't book anybody, or we booked one. On my end, I'm not only trying to close business at the show, I'm giving enter to win a free engagement session. So I've got 100, 200 brides signing up that I'm immediately emailing and saying, thanks for stopping by a booth. Would love to meet with you to take advantage of our show special. Then a week later, I'm getting a list of names from the show of everybody who was at the show. And I kind of reference those lists, so I'm not double emailing people. And then the new names I get, I go, okay, hey, we didn't get to meet with you. We know you're getting married. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Know you're getting married. Would love to extend our show special to you if you schedule a meeting by January 31st. So now I've just maximized my effort at a single bridal show. I can book a bride at the show. I can book within the 7 days post-show of the people who stopped by my booth and showed interest. And then I've got another 2-week window of an extended audience. So each show, I've got 3 opportunities to close business. To me, that's how you maximize your footprint at any given bridal show.
I love that. There are such good tactical, practical tips there. And I think that everyone can benefit from them. So when you think about marketing as a whole, and you think about small business spending money on marketing, we kind of talked about the total cost. Do you feel like there's some sort of either magic number or maybe even percentage that people should consider spending? Like if they're passionate, because a lot of pros, they start, I'm passionate about my calligraphy, or I'm passionate about my art or whatever. And then they're like, got to put the business hat on, right? And start making these business decisions. And they're like, oh my God, we just spent $5 million on our building. we got to have some marketing now, or, I just bought the $3,000 camera or whatever it is. So is there a number that you can give people, or maybe a percentage or a kind of starting place that they can consider when maybe starting or considering revisiting their budget for marketing?
Absolutely. And I can give you a number that's not just a feel of what I feel it should be. According to the SBA, Small Business Association, the average small business spends between 7 and 9% on marketing, 7 and 9% of gross sales. So if you want to do $100,000 a year, you got to spend $7,000 and $9,000 of that $100,000 on marketing. Okay. Now, again, there's an asterisk there, right? There's a caveat. That's for, I would say, a little bit of an established business to keep nurturing, right? If you're a new business, a new startup, I would double that number. So when you're in startup mode, you got to be aggressive with your marketing, because why? You're trying to outdo all the established businesses in your niche. So if you're a new venue in town, I'm going to pick 2 venues. Venue A is established. They've been here for 10 years. Everybody knows their name. They've got a good reputation. Venue B, brand new business. Nobody's ever heard of it, but they got a really cool space. Venue B has to work twice as hard to book new business as venue A. Venue A has got, hey, my cousin got married at your venue. My sister got married at your venue. I was at a wedding last month at your venue. So they've got this built-in referral network. They've seen your marketing, your ads. They've driven by your location. But venue B, no one's ever heard of. So they got an uphill battle, because when they go, hey, I'm looking for one of the best venues in town, your name's not coming up because no one's ever heard of you. And that's where business owners get lost. And then there's venue C, right? And we're talking about 3 different types of businesses, right? One is established, still marketing, still active. One is the new kid on the block. And then venue C is the established old guard. Those are the businesses, any niche, any genre, by the way. Those are the businesses that are at risk of going out of business. Why? We don't need to market. We've got referrals. Everybody knows who we are. We're the best in the industry and blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're going to be out of business real quick, because the new kid on the block is going to outspend and out-hustle you. They're going to develop new relationships. They're going to work hard to win new business. You, venue C, you think your shit doesn't stink. You think you're the best venue, florist, photographer. and you don't think you have to work for business anymore, and you're going to wake up one day and be like, what just happened? And so venue B is always at risk of becoming venue C if they're not careful, right? And venue A is working their asses off to take venue B's business and venue C's business. Does that make sense?
Totally. That's powerful. That's great insight, not only for new business owners, but then also kind of the incumbents in the industry who may feel like they can rest on their laurels a little bit. But to your point,
not in this day and age.
No, not at all. And technology is changing and the way that couples like to be communicated with. Sal, you mentioned it, having the word of mouth presence is so powerful, and it really can help you quite a bit. That venue A that does have to prove themselves, even if they are cool, even if there is some wow factor there, they're still going to have to kind of define themselves and prove themselves out in the market. Is there a time frame that you've seen as you've worked with any of your clients in your business? Have you seen that there is kind of this time period that a venue, if they're doing the right stuff, that they go from being kind of a venue A to more of a venue B, more of an established thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's my experience has been it's usually 2 to 3 cycles, and a cycle is a wedding season, right? Usually, if you're in a startup mode, you're a new venue. And we're talking venues, but it would be almost any niche. You're going to bridal shows, you're getting your name out there. You got to remember, year one, you're still an unknown entity. People haven't heard of you. There's going to be some people who take a risk with you, but there's going to be plenty that are like, well, yeah, they're the same price as venue A, and venue A did your sister's wedding, or venue A's got a 5-star reputation online. Venue B, we never even heard of them. Photographer B, we've never even heard of them. I'm sorry, I'm screwing this up. But the new guy, right?
Yeah,
we've never heard of them. And so you've got to give yourself 2 or 3 cycles of marketing, of going to shows, of kind of a stick-to-itness before you really become like, oh yeah, I've heard of you, right? So it takes a little bit of time, but 2 to 3 cycles, it feels right.
Okay. So let me recap what I've heard so far. In the beginning, we talked and you were saying the numbers are so important, right? Was I hearing that correctly? Just really understanding to graduate to from a creative to a CEO, I think is kind of the way you said it.
That's right.
You got to know your numbers. And then number 2, we talked about how important it was to actually look at the marketing, invest in the marketing, understand where you're choosing to be, and then not slip if you're an incumbent business. And then if you're a brand new business, you got to outperform. The next question that I have is, as you're looking at all these, and as just businesses in this industry are looking at all these options, you mentioned shows, but there's, the whole wedding pro, conglomerate basically that does everything that they do as far as advertising vendors. You've got Here Comes the Guide, Wedding Spot, Zola, Eventective. You've got, even the things like Thumbtack and, some of those other things that you can hire people, Gig Salad and places like that. Where, in your opinion, should small business owners, maybe that business A that's just new on the scene and maybe has limited funds, they know they've got to save up some money over the next couple cycles to really define themselves, where should they be prioritizing their marketing dollars in terms of platforms or, places that they should sit?
That's a loaded question. Two answers for you here. The first thing is, before you consider where to advertise, understand that where you're advertising is almost like what zip code you decide to put your business in, right? And a lot of times people don't think that way. So what do I mean by that? Well, as a high-end wedding photographer, which is what we are in our studio, average wedding spends 10 plus grand with us for photography. You know why I'm not advertising? Thumbtack. Because that's not where somebody of higher that's where, first of all, budget brides are going, right? And that's where budget photographers are going. It's not a knock against Thumbtack. It's just the reality of the audience that they're bringing to the table. So what I'm saying is, you have to think about your business, the cost of the product or service you're offering, but most importantly, who is your client? So a lot of industry people, right, regardless of what genre they're in, never step back and say, who is my client? So I challenge anyone watching this to ask yourself that question. Who is your client? Now, I already think I know what the answers are going to be. Well, brides who are getting married. Oh, thanks, Captain. So the truth is that that's not who your client is, because that means every wedding is a potential wedding for you. And that nothing could be further from the truth. So if you were to ask me, who's your client, Sal? I'd say, well, great. It's female. It's 24 to 36 years old. She's fashion forward. She's paying for a majority of her wedding versus her parents. Whoa. I just got very specific on who my client is. So why is that so important? Because all my marketing, all my messaging, all my locations of advertising are geared towards connecting with that female 24 to 36-year-old who is paying for their own wedding. And if you look at my work, my photography, my style, it's all geared towards talking to that fashion forward bride. You know who's not booking me? A bride who doesn't care about the way she looks. She's not booking me. She doesn't want me. She's going to Thumbtack. I don't want to be on Thumbtack. So that's so important for businesses. I challenge every single business owner here to step back and just define who your bride is. Notice I didn't say it's male. Not because we don't shoot same-sex weddings. It's not male because most grooms don't care about the photography. Now again, 80-20, right? Of course, there are some grooms who are like, no, I'm into it. But I got to think about my marketing dollars and positioning. And I know that it's the bride mostly who cares about imagery. And that's historically, okay?
Let me ask a clarifying question here really quick. What size of bucket is too small? You kind of started taking it from this big wedding bucket to like the 24 to 36-year-old. I mean, you kind of started making the bucket smaller, right? What size bucket is too small? How specific can we get where we start actually losing a market that we're actually able to advertise to?
Yeah, that really is an interesting question. This one, I wouldn't, my answer is going to be more on feel on this one versus, actual data. I think if you start going, I've watched photographers specifically, there'll be photographers that focus just on like Asian style weddings or African-American weddings, same-sex weddings. I think when you start going down that niche, it becomes too specific. I think you might be hurting your business. Now, of course, that's just photography where there is a specialty, right? I mean, there are nuances to photographing an African-American wedding, a same-sex wedding, a Asian wedding, or Indian, right? So, I mean, there's nuances there. But if you're a venue, do you really want to narrow it in to that genre? And now I would say the argument could be made, well, you know what? Hey, Sal, I would rather focus on Indian weddings because they have special needs that I want to cater to. Now, look, I'm in the Midwest, right? I mean, we do not have a whole lot of same-sex weddings, Indian weddings. I get, an inquiry for like an Indian wedding, like maybe once every 2 years. Same-sex weddings, I get an inquiry, maybe 2 a year. And so I know that's not my target. But if you're in California, New York, right, major cities, I could see there being a market for like, we cater to Indian weddings, right?
Yeah.
And so the answer it's so tough to wrap your arms around, because the answer really is, it depends. For me, in the Midwest, I'm trying to appeal to as broad of an audience as I can. I'm not alienating same-sex weddings. I'm not alienating African-American or Indian weddings by any stretch, because when they come in, we grab them. I love them because they're different, right? I mean, I'm in St. Louis, the St. Louis Arch. It's I'm sure in San Diego.
Yep.
There's probably a place where every wedding photographer goes to take pictures. And like, I want to blow my head off, right? Because I'm so tired of shooting in these same spots. I love when somebody new comes in and they have new ideas and, new way of running their wedding. And it's always exciting to me. But the truth is, I still have to pay bills. Yeah. And so again, as a business owner, if we bring this back full circle, you really have to look at, you don't want to alienate any part of the market. You want to throw your darts, if you will, at the largest circle, right, in your specific market.
Got it. That's such a wonderful way to demonstrate it, because you do have to be targeted enough so you're not just throwing your marketing dollars, because we don't have unlimited marketing dollars as small
Right.
businesses. But at the same time, you don't want to be so narrow so that you are kind of alienating other people. You kind of get into this other scenario where maybe the market that you're guessing that you're going to serve is not actually there.
Well, take a step back. I always like to look at real world, versus niche marketing. I mean, if you're in the wedding industry, you're very niche, whether you want to realize it or not. So what I do is, we travel a lot for work, and we'll be at a hotel and the only news channel there is Fox News. We'll be at another hotel and the only news channel is CNN. And their commercials are very targeted to their audiences. And me and my wife, who are, I would say, students of marketing, we always like to see what they're doing. It's very interesting that you will see a brand and you'll see a commercial for that same brand on CNN, and you'll see that same commercial on Fox. Now, I'm just picking news channels, but it could be ABC versus NBC, whatever.
It's a great way. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're seeing one commercial might be an entire African-American family, right? That they're targeting and marketing to. And then on another channel, it's a complete mix, right? Wife's African-American, the husband's Asian, the kids, I don't know where they came from. They don't even look like they came from the same parents. It doesn't matter. They're just trying to appeal to everyone in that. And that's just marketing, right? They're trying to appeal to everybody. But it's always fascinating to watch that. And that exists because they have unlimited marketing budgets. See, us as small business owners, we do have to be a little more targeted and a little bit more broad, if you will. We can't get specific where we're going to run one ad for this community, one ad for that community. We just don't have budgets for that. So we've got to be broad, right, in who we're appealing to, but not so broad that we're not appealing to anybody.
Well said. Well said. I love that. Well, Sal, we're getting to the end here, and this has been so much fun because I love marketing, and the tips and the tactics that you've armed us with today, I think are going to be extremely helpful for business owners. One final question that I have for you here: when you consider the industry as a whole, we've talked about a bunch of different things, marketing, where to spend the marketing dollars, target client, different things like that. Do you feel like there is one specific area that business owners are just missing the mark consistently that you could kind of just speak to maybe give some people some encouragement who might be struggling?
Yeah, I think most business owners in our industry are missing the experience, the customer experience. Here's what I mean by that. Right now we live in a crazy world. I mean, unless you've just had your head in the sand for the last two plus years, everybody's experiencing the same thing, right? COVID restrictions, weddings are on, weddings are off, venues are closed, venues are open, wearing masks, got to be vaccinated, whatever the case may be. It's crazy time. And so staffing is really where I'm going with this. Almost every business is having issues or challenges with staffing. Okay. And along with staffing, it's this ripple effect. Service is what suffers. So think about it. If you're watching this, think about it from your perspective. How frustrated are you when you're going to a restaurant and you're getting shitty service? How frustrated are you when you're calling a customer support hotline and you get the message that says they're not returning phone calls, or it'll be 48 hours before you hear from somebody, right? It's pissing you off. So service levels have just dropped off, and it's the same excuse from everybody. Oh, COVID, no, it's COVID. And so people don't want to hear that anymore. And so what I have found is that if you build your business and get back to basics, right? So there's a great book called The Experience Economy. And so it's a great book. It was relevant 3-4 years ago. It is more than relevant now. You are not selling your venue. I am not selling a photograph. What I am selling is a customer experience. And if you can wrap your head around that from your business, that means return phone calls in less than 4 hours. That's something we try to pride ourselves in. If an inquiry comes in, within 4 hours, we're responding. Now, I'm not talking about if it comes in at 2:00 in the morning. I'm saying during normal business hours, we're responding within 4 hours. We're giving more of a personalized experience to our customers. We're accessible to our customers. If you do these sorts of things, you're going to close more business than you can shake a stick at, because that's all it takes right now. The bar is so low to be successful. And so step away from this and of all the things you're going to do, because guess what? The experience is part of marketing, because that's what people are going to walk away from dealing with your business and brag about. So that's that. Remember, we gave the venue example where venue A, B, and C. Venue C and venue, I believe it was A, the established ones. Those two venues are riding their experience kind of highs. Well, right now, they're probably struggling with experience. So if you're a new and upcomer, don't compete on price. Don't compete on anything other than service. If you compete on service, you watch. You may be more expensive, but if you're giving good service, people are going to spend that money with you.
That is so powerful. I love it. I love it. Customer experience is near and dear to my heart. We came from a staffing background, and I'm so passionate about that. And you're totally right. You're literally speaking my language, because my wife and I went with our daughters last night to a taco shop, and this restaurant is heavily understaffed. We saw it, so we kind of knew that going into it, it was going to be a little bit rough, and so we were prepared for it. But then we sat down, and the servers who were there, no sense of urgency. They already kind of felt the whole place looked defeated already.
Right.
And I think it's a lack of management, right? And it's a lack of the leader,
it's CEO.
Exactly. And so you as the business leader listening to this, you as the hiring manager listening to this, you as the CEO or entrepreneur, whether you're a solopreneur or not, like, find ways to inspire your team, even if it's a team of folks, 1099 folks that you're just working with. Like, Sal, you're totally right. I love that. Thank you so much
for coming on
the show today. This was awesome. I cannot wait to put it out to everybody. Can you tell everyone, if they want to connect with you personally, connect with the brands that you operate, and kind of see more about who you are, where is the best place that they should be looking?
Yeah, we've got our photography site, which is salcincotta.com, SALCINCOTTA.com. And then if you want help with your business and you need help there, it's creativesync.com. Creative spelled normal, CINC.com. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully you guys all love this podcast and feel a little inspired to go out there and up your level for your business in 22.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sal, for coming on. And for anyone listening, you're definitely going to want to check out the YouTube channel. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, we do have a great podcast that you can listen to while you're doing everything else that you're doing in your life. All righty, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much, Sal.
Later.